Hi, and welcome to Power of the Network. I'm your host, Tim Locker, Vice President of Broadband here at CBM. This episode, this is a great one. It takes me back, almost 16 years. Our guest this week is Frank Foster. He is one of the MRF trainers. He does a CPSC, a sales training. I took his course back in 2009. And so this is great for me to reminisce with Frank and talk sales and sales professionals. A lot of things have changed over the years, but a lot of it's still the same. So join us as we reconnect with Frank. Frank, appreciate you so much for joining us today. Happy to have you here. It's been a long time since we've seen each other, but
2009, I think, was the last time. Maybe at CPMR. Yeah.
Yep. So, but no, it's great to have you in studio, and we've had some other folks that work with MRF on and in the past, and it's great to have you here. So, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
I want to start off, I guess. Frank Foster and Associates has been around for 30-some years now, and you do sales coaching, sales training. Let's go back 30-some years ago. What got you to be the expert that you are? How did you get to be so accredited, I guess?
Well, it's interesting. My background was the food industry. I came up through the consumer packaged goods world.
Okay.
My last real job, the last time I worked for a company, was a company called Pet Incorporated. You probably don't know Pet Incorporated out of St. Louis, Missouri, but they may know some of the brands: Old El Paso,
sure.
Progresso Soups, Gaines Waffles.
Wait a minute. So Old El Paso are they in St. Louis?
No.
Because they used to have remember the old commercials that get a rope, New York City.
New York, yeah, that was their marketing campaign.
Yeah.
But I was the Canadian Vice President of Sales and Marketing for that brand, those brands in Canada. And we were brokers in my world, or in the food world, are same as a manufacturer rep. They have numbers of different lines. They're called food brokers in the food business.
Okay.
And we used to use broker network right across Canada.
How long did you do that?
Oh, I was in the food business for 25, 30 years. So, 25 years. Yeah.
What drove the transition to the training role?
I'm going to give you a real funny answer here. The industry changed. In Canada, there's basically 5 major buyers.
Okay. 5
retailers. And they've had such a grip on the industry that it was tough to do anything as an independent or as a small guy. And they were beating up the small guys so badly. I said, I'm getting out of here.
So you just transitioned.
Yeah. And I had a friend of mine that was, I was in the college system, and I started doing continuing education courses, teaching at night. And I said, I like this. And so I started to expand on that and then started my own training company, and that's where I am today.
Okay, awesome. So it's been, like you said, so I went through the CSP program 2009. Mm-hmm. You were one of the instructors there. And I guess define a little bit, so the organization is with MRF, define for the listeners, what the organization is all about and, kind of what's behind.
Okay, let me give you the 2 parts. Manufacturers Representatives Education Research Foundation.
MRF, that's why I said
That's what we're called,
yeah.
MRF. It's easier. MRF is the training body of a parent association that's a parent association of about 20, 25 other associations. So, for example, NEMRA, ERA, they're all members of MRF, and they have access to the MRF training.
Okay.
IPA is the Institute for Professional Advancement. IPA is the certification side. They control the certification. So, for example, MRF offers 2 certifications: CPSC, Certified Professional Sales Consultant, and the CPMR, Certified Professional Manufacturer Rep.
Yep.
Of which you are both, I might.
Yeah, I've taken both. Yep.
CSP became CPSC, and I'll talk more about that in a minute, and CPMR. And they offer those programs. CPSC, we offer 4 or 5 times a year, sort of around the United States. We have one scheduled for Toronto in April, but that'll be the first time out of the U.S. with the CPSC program.
Well, that'll be nice, close to home for you.
Close to home, yeah, because I'm out of Toronto. And But we rotate them around. So, for example, we're in Atlanta, Denver, we've been Orlando, Costa Mesa, San Diego. I mean, we rotate those programs around.
Yeah.
And CPMR is a 1 week a year for 3 years
Yep.
program and based in Austin, Texas.
Always in Austin?
It is now. It used to be in Tempe, and then it was in Indianapolis for a while, but now it's last number of years it's been in Austin.
Okay. So you do a lot of work with that organization. What is your work through Frank Foster and Associates? Is it different, or is it all collaborative with Murph, or do you go different directions? What does that look like?
I'm going to, again, it's kind of both.
Okay.
Frank Foster and Associates, for the last 30 years, has been a sales training company.
Yep.
And I've developed programs, delivered programs. My largest client was the Canadian Professional Sales Association, CPSA.
Okay.
And CPSA developed the Certified Sales Professional Program, CSP.
Okay. Which I took.
Which
Yep.
you took. And I took that program from CPSA to Murph, and Murph took it over for the United States.
Gotcha.
About 3 or 4 years ago, CPSA closed their doors. They went bankrupt, or they went out of business.
Okay.
And the CSP designation went with it. So we created our own designation, Certified Professional Sales Consultant, CPSC, with a gentleman called Paul Watts out of Calgary, Alberta, who wrote the program. He and I were both involved with CPSA back in the day.
Okay.
And so the bulk of my training has been through CPSA and now Murph. And Murph is probably, 90% of my business. The other 10% is smaller Canadian programs that I offer. I'm also involved with the college system in Canada, and I've been a professor at a college in Canada for 25 years or so.
What courses do you teach there?
Sales and marketing.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was going to guess that, but yeah, perfect.
Yeah. Customer service. So three.
So let's go back to 2009 when I was in your CSP course. The one thing I remember, other than diligently trying to study the night before the exam,
Can I just qualify that?
Sure.
CPSC is a 3-day workshop, and then a written exam and an oral exam.
Yep.
So that's where the stressors come in. That's the stress. They got to do a written and an oral exam.
And I remember specifically the oral exam. And I remember in detail your comments, and I'll throw myself under the bus, but I did I would say a decent job. It was all about sell me this pen, right? And so I took the pen and I did a good job of asking questions, trying to figure out what do you need the pen for, et cetera, and explaining the benefits and all that. But what I failed to do was let you touch, feel, handle, try the pen out. I didn't give it to you. So that's where I failed. What do you see? What's the most common mistake that you see?
I think that people do a data dump. They show up and they say, this pen does this, and it does this, and it does this, and does this, does this. Would you like one? Which is a typical transactional type sales world. But in today's model, it's not about telling, it's about asking. And they don't ask enough questions. They don't try and find out what my needs are. And oftentimes, there's a hidden issue in the buying situation. The buyer doesn't want to tell you everything. They don't want to open the kimono and give you everything. They've got a hidden thing. And the same as in our role play is that there's a hidden issue that you need to ask the questions to get to.
Are the questions the trick to unlocking the hidden info?
I don't like
or
the word
sometimes
trick,
it was just not, can you just not get it? Or how does that, is there a way to get to that hidden info?
I think that we say that there's 4 or 5 things that you should ask in any sales interview. What's the current situation? What's the desired situation? What's the decision-making process? Time and budget constraints? And what are going to be the key performance indicators? What are the things that I'm going to need, the criteria I'm going to need to be successful? So if you ask those questions, then you usually will get to the meat of the issue.
Yeah, I've noticed that even, on just a handful of things recently where it seems like we've beat our head up against the wall. Price is always the first objection.
Yep.
We get past that. I feel like we figure out what the needs are, but for some reason we're just not able to take that last step. And there's always something that we've missed. We had an interesting one recently with a communication contractor, trying to sell them Interduct, and when it wasn't price, it wasn't availability, it was terms. It ended up, he had a special deal with this manufacturer of how he could buy and how he could pay, and it helped him with the cash flow situation. And I mean, price had nothing to do with it, but it took us 3 years, I think, to finally figure out what that little nugget is. So I was hoping I could find a little trick of okay, how do we get there? So,
well, I think the desired future.
Yeah.
What do you want to happen? If you had a magic wand, what would you change in a perfect world? What would you want from a supplier? And those are the type of questions that should give you that, should uncover that. But again, there's a hidden thing. Buyers don't want to tell you everything.
Yeah.
So he's trying to keep it in the background.
Yeah.
Did he want extended terms or special terms because he was financially challenged?
I don't know so much challenged, but just cash flow. Yeah, it was a cash flow situation.
So he didn't want you to know that.
Yeah,
and there's the issue right there. Is when you did if you did your due diligence and you did your credit check on him, that might have come up. Then you can say, okay, I understand that.
When a lot of times, those particular contractors kind of have to float the bill for the customers and buy all that material, and that could be a challenge.
Yep.
So, yeah.
And with this particular one, were you using distributor or was it direct sale?
Distributor.
Distributor. Yeah. So then there's another layer in there that you got to figure out too. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, a lot of what you do, obviously through MRF, it's developed around, a manufacturer's rep type of organization.
Sure.
What's different about selling as a rep versus, just a traditional direct sales guy?
Well, I've worked with both, but let's just let me put it in as simple terms as I can. I always say that salespeople are the stress and the meat and the stress sandwich. You got your customer and you got your company, and you're stuck in the middle. A manufacturer rep has a third layer. It's called the manufacturers or principals, the people that you represent. So not only do you have your company's stress, you have your customers' stress, but you also have the manufacturer putting stresses on it. And I think that's what's different than a direct captive sales force, is they only have two stressors versus a manufacturer rep who might have more.
I know it's a challenge for new people that still to this day it's kind of hard to describe what a rep does. But new people coming into the industry, for me specifically, I was selling equipment. I would deliver the equipment. I would deliver the invoice. I would collect the check, and bring it back. Where I don't do that now necessarily, with the added layer of distribution. So I guess what would be the best way to describe that? 18 years later, I should still know, the best way to describe what a rep does. But in your mind, how would you describe that?
When people ask me that, who are your customers, who are your clients? I say almost all the clients that MRF works with are multiple line salespeople. They represent more than one company.
Yeah.
And I use your term, and they have a line card. And on that line card might be 10, 15, 20 different companies that they represent. And some of them are synergistic. Some of those lines work together. Some of them are completely independent. It depends on the industry, and it depends on the rep, on the manufacturers. But that's the best way to describe it, is that they're not just a captive sales force. They're not a one-trick pony. They got many products that they could represent.
It's interesting that I've learned, like for us, the line card is very synergistic. One thing leads right to the other, and it's interesting how one manufacturer may be the big horse and get you in with one thing, but the other thing might get the horse in there too. They kind of feed off of each other too, and I think it's important for manufacturers to realize that. I think not necessarily ego, but people assume that they're the best and that's why they're getting in there. But there is a lot of back and forth, and that synergistic line makes a big difference.
One of the things that we work on, particularly in CPSC, is what we call a 6x6 or full line selling, is that most salespeople sell the products they like to the customers they like. The hard part is selling the products you don't like to the customers you don't like.
Yes.
And if I look at your line card, it drives me crazy. I go and work with reps, and we get in front of a buyer, and the buyer says, I didn't know you sold that. Oh, shame on you.
Yeah.
If you're not talking full line, look at the opportunities you're missing.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest weakness that I see in the rep world is they fall in love with lines and they sell those lines.
Yeah.
And
you see it from the other side too, from the manufacturer's perspective to the rep. They're like, okay, well, Frank does a great job for us. Why is everybody else not like Frank? How come his numbers are killing it and they're not? And we talk about that internally. That's one of the biggest things. There's always new lines and new territories and new ways to grow revenue, et cetera. But we talk about that a lot. The best way is to sell everything you have.
That's right. Full line selling.
What's the trick to getting people out of those old habits and leaning on to their weaknesses?
If I say to most sales reps, manufacturer reps, who's your top 6 customers? I mean, Vilfredo Pareto was an Italian economist who discovered that a disproportionate amount of results come from a smaller amount of effort.
Sure.
You know it as the 80-20 rule.
Yeah.
It's probably more like 90-10. Most organizations, 90% of their business comes from their top 6 customers. I bet you if you went back and looked at your own sales of your organization, your top 6 customers will deliver a very, very high disproportionate amount of results. But what we don't realize is what they don't buy. They may be the number one buyer of, I don't know, cable or boxes or something, but they don't buy this, and this. So if we can make our reps more aware of that, here's what they do buy, but also here's what they don't buy. And every time you talk to that customer, you talk about the products they don't buy. Not just the ones they do, but and we have an opportunity this month on this product, and let me give you a sample. Let me send you some information. Let me put you through to their website. Let me find out a little bit more about what your needs might be there. We don't do that very well.
Yeah. Dan Levac with PLP kind of coined the phrase, STP, uses the little STP logo, but sell the package.
Yep.
And so we repeat that all the time, but it's still a challenge. Everybody's got their comfort level, whether it's a product or where it's, a customer. But yeah, getting them out of that shell of the comfort level is probably the biggest challenge.
We do in our program we call a 6x6. Top 6 customers, top 6 products. The products might change. They change. Could be most profitable. Could be the most new product. It could be product of the day. It doesn't matter. The products change, but the customers pretty much stay consistent. And the goal is to fill in the areas that they don't buy. Just if you do a matrix and just fill in the holes, and it's a great tool.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. It shows you definitely what you're missing and it gives you the target. Let's switch gears a little bit towards CPMR. I took that. It's a 3-year course. I think I finished in 2016, something like that. Yeah. It was very interesting because at the time, I always like to put it, I always like to state this because Marla forced me to go back to college. She'll argue that, but she did. And I'm grateful for that. We've got a great program here at CBM, and we help not just employees, but also children with tuition. So I'm glad I did. I didn't go to school right after high school. I think I started when I was 40 when I started. So, but basically the same time frame while I was going through my college courses, I was also taking CPMR. And so it was interesting to me just to see how much of that I learned in CPMR that reverted back to what I would then follow up with, through my business classes. And to me, it was kind of like a master's program that was just, it's 3 years, but 1 week every year. And
concentrated.
It was really concentrated, but it was very clear to me how relevant the info was, as I was going through both at the same time.
Right.
So, talk a little bit about what the course does, what it offers, what the value to a rep, the value to a manufacturer. Give us a little pitch on that.
A CPMR, and I think you just used the term, is kind of like the master's degree of how to run a rep firm.
Yep.
And it's designed to give reps and rep wannabe owners, rep wannabes, people who are in the succession planning of an organization, the skills and information to be a better rep manager. I only did one session. I did the sales session. There are three years, so it's 101, 201, and 301.
Yep.
And I'm one session in 101. But there's great material in there, great information, great HR. I think you've had Nancy on here before.
Yeah, Nancy's great. She's one of my favorites.
Our HR expert. She's wonderful. And we have almost everybody that teaches it is either from the rep business, has some rep experience, or they're university or college professor type people who are business people who teach business courses. So it's very concentrated. It's like a 1 year course in a week.
Yeah.
And it's not easy. I don't want to fool anybody. It's
very intense.
It's a hard
for sure.
slug.
CBM is a manufacturer's rep based right here in Kansas City. We've got territory where we cover from Iowa all the way down to Texas. We cover specifically 3 different market segments: utility, commercial industrial, and broadband communications. CBM is structured differently. We're an employee-owned company. We're ran as an ESOP. That allows us to do business differently. We can cross lines of markets. We can put our people where they need to be and really have expertise in the right place. That's what makes a difference, for our customers and for our manufacturers. If you think we can help you with a product line in the Midwest, look no further than CBM. Find us right here at cbmrep.com. What's the benefit to a manufacturer, to having reps that have gone through this?
How we started with this is when I was with the CPS, working with the CPSA, we said, if you were going to hire a salesperson today, what would be the criteria? How would you determine what a good salesperson is? And there really wasn't anything.
Yeah.
So we developed the Certified Sales Professional Program to say, here's the criteria that's required to have a good salesperson. CPSC is the same concept. And so that's sort of the template for the CPSC. CPMR is kind of the same. If you went to a manufacturer and you said, I have a house full of CPSCs, all of my sales reps have been through the program, that says that they're all certified, they're all know their stuff, they're all sort of top of the level in sales professionalism. So you should use my organization because we're more certifiably better than others. Same with CPMR. CPMR is exactly what that is. It is the people that have gone through it are prepared to run and succession planning and so on as part of it to take over a rep firm.
Yeah.
So it's not just, again, it's not just about succession. It's also about business skills that you need to run a better organization.
That succession planning is a big deal, and I think it's overlooked a lot of times. And for us, being an ESOP, it's kind of built into our plan. Mm-hmm. We're a little bit unique in that it's kind of less of a worry, because let's face it, if it's couple old guys and out selling stuff and one of you kicks the bucket, the manufacturer's kind of left trying to figure out what to do, and that happens. So there is risk for those manufacturers.
When did you guys become an ESOP? Because that's fairly new concept.
1988.
Oh, it's been
1988.
Yeah, leading edge stuff.
When John Marietti retired, that's when. So he sold the company
of CBM.
Yep.
Okay, got it.
Yep. So he sold the company to the ESOP in 88. Yeah. So that's. I don't know when ESOPs first started, but that's probably pretty early.
Fairly early on. Yeah.
Yeah. So
and do all employees participate from day one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So we've early on there was some company stock issued that was outside of the ESOP. Almost all of that has been kind of bought back. So we're trying to get to where 100% of it's owned
by the
in the
employees.
ESOP. Yeah, there's just a handful of shares left outside of it. But so we've changed the rules for being eligible for it. So now you're eligible right away, because it's kind of a long process. So like if used to be you had a waiting period, 6 months or a year, I forget which. But so a person puts in a first year. And then, so next year they're eligible to be in the plan. So they go through that whole year. And then it's, sometime later that spring when they finally actually see the actual benefit of it. And so from a new person perspective, it's a long process. And you really have to really sell the value of the ESOP. When you've been here as long as I have, you see the value of the ESOP. It's pretty clear. But for somebody that's new and you talk about it, you're waiting. It could be 2.5, 3 years before they actually see their first input to it.
Yep,
So
right.
we've kind of changed that model. So there's still it's still next spring before you see it, but people are eligible sooner. Yeah. So, we try to kind of stay with the times and make those kind of changes to help the employees. I mean, let's say, if you start in November and you work for a month, this year, the ESOP contribution is not that much anyway, because it's a percentage of your income. So you're talking about a month. Why not get them involved sooner, right? Instead of make them wait another year. So, we've tried to stay up with different things like that.
And how many CPMRs? You have three or four
in the organization?
Organization.
Oh, we've got way more than that.
Yeah.
That'd be a good Marla question.
Okay.
I can think of a half a dozen.
Oh, that many? Okay.
Easily. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's to a manufacturer. That says the manufacturer, you guys are investing in your company, investing in your employees, both from an ESOP standpoint and from a accreditation and education standpoint. And that to the manufacturer, that's a good selling point to why they should use you.
What do you think is one of the biggest mistakes or one of the biggest issues, I guess, between a rep and a manufacturer? What do you think from a rep's perspective, what do you think you see as the biggest mistake in handling manufacturers?
I think that because of the complexity of a line card, there's the old expression that the noisy wheel gets the grease, or whatever, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And so the manufacturer that's bitching the most tends to get the most attention, whether right or wrong. Okay, but that's reality. And that's a challenge that a manufacturer rep has, is how do I tell this squeaky wheel that unless they are sort of a dominant player in the line card, that there are other companies, that we represent other companies as well. As a manufacturer, if I've got a captive sales force, that's not an issue, because it's more of a product issue than a company issue. I mean, you're not pushing enough product or this product or that product as opposed to this manufacturer. So that's the main difference, is that a captive lines manufacturer, a captive manufacturer with a captive line sales force, they have product issues versus a manufacturer rep who have company issues. Understand what I mean? But comment.
Yeah. And I think communication goes a long way.
Yep.
We've talked about it a little bit, but people have their comfort zone and they're good at this and maybe not good at that. So, this manufacturer's super excited about what this person does here, but this everybody's kind of got their own little experts. Mm-hmm. But I think we all, from the bottom level to the top, communication, with those manufacturers and with your regionals, et cetera, I think is very important.
I just finished a program with at your facility yesterday. We've just launched a new customer service program, Successful Selling Skills. And one of the things that jumped out at me when listening to particularly some of your folks, but not just yours, but because there was a mixed crowd from other companies as well, was how much communication is a challenge for them.
Yeah.
People getting 20 emails about the same issue. And it could be 20 emails for a $100 sale. It could also be $20 for $1 million sale.
Yeah.
And how do you prioritize that? How do you, and that's one of the challenges, you said communication.
Yeah.
How do you decide which is the email that should be taken the most seriously or given the most attention?
Yeah. What's the answer?
The answer is I'm going to use two terms. One is from CPSC, we call it return on time invested, ROTI.
Yep.
And the new one from customer services, ROAR, return on assets required. Same thing, is that whichever one's going to give you the biggest return on your time invested, that's where you should prioritize. That doesn't mean ignoring customers.
Yeah.
It means prioritizing.
You always have to take care of the customer.
Yeah, it means prioritizing customers.
Yeah.
So the $1 million sale might have a return on investment of, I don't know, pick a number, $500 an hour. The $100 sale may be $100, but it's only an hour and it's done. It's quick.
Yeah.
You know, so you got to be based on time and a sales result in time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of always been my philosophy. Take care of the customer. You got to, please the principals.
Yep.
They're our customers as well. But the end user, you have to think about what are their expectations.
Mm-hmm.
If you were in their situation, how would you want to be treated? What would your expectation be? And put your own personal issues aside and deal with, take care of them. Do what needs to be done, first and foremost.
I'll pick up on a company you may or may not like them. It's irrelevant. The point is Amazon. Amazon's done a marvelous job from a customer service standpoint of managing their service experience. Recently, I bought a shower pole that you put a shower head on to hold, and it didn't fit. It wasn't right. So I just sent it back.
Yep.
Easy to send back. It was just no questions asked, just send it back. That's pretty good customer service, knowing that I can buy something pain-free and being able to do that. So that's focusing on the customer's needs, and that's exactly what you're saying, is we really need to make sure that end customer is being satisfied.
Yeah. Yeah, the first call I had Monday morning at 7:45 had a battery leaking. It's not what you want to wake up and start your Monday with, But first thing we're doing is we're going to go take care of it.
And
right?
What did you do? Replace it?
Yep. Actually, I'm actually doing that tomorrow.
There you go.
So but I had a direct conversation with the customer, trying to figure out what they expect. Do I have to drop everything right now and run up there? I will. Or, what's the situation? So
it's a point that I stress in both our programs, is that we need to ask the magic question more often. And the magic question is, when do you need that by?
Yeah.
As a salesperson, we tend to think that when a customer has a request, we jump on it. We're going to get it done right away. Let's get it done. Well, in fact, maybe they don't need it right away.
Yeah.
So when do you need that by is a question we need to put into our lexicon of questions more frequently.
Yeah. We had a pretty good one of our gentlemen that was in your class yesterday was on the backside. We had all of our inside folks in the class, so we had some of our other guys covering the phones, and it was perfect day for things to blow up. And one of those deals was a product wasn't going to deliver. The customer needs it today. What can we do? Sometimes it's just a challenge when maybe the factory doesn't deliver on that expectation. Mm-hmm. And at that point, it's kind of getting a tough spot because you're an advocate for the customer. But we've also got to be careful
from the company,
with the manufacturers.
And that goes back to the comment I made about stress sandwich. Is that you get not just the customer, but you also got the manufacturer. You got to keep them both happy, both sides of that.
Yeah. So, what keeps you passionate about what you do?
There's an old expression, is that if you loved what you do, you never work a day in your life. And I've been doing it for 30 years, and I'm a great believer that if you go back in history, particularly in media, how salespeople are portrayed. Think of them. I'm going to date myself here, but movies like Tin Man or Cadillac Man or Glengarry Glen Ross, which are salespeople, and they're kind of slimy and slippery and not very trustworthy. We've done a crappy job as a profession of making our profession professional.
Yeah.
to make it become more something that somebody wants to be. Like rarely do I have my students in my college say, "I want to be a person." They say, "I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer. I want to be an accountant." But nobody ever says, "I want to be a salesperson." Yet most of us somewhere in our life are.
Yeah.
So we've done a really poor job on that, and so that drives me from a passion standpoint to raise the professionalism, the how salespeople are viewed as to be more professional. Hence the certified professional.
Well, and the perception, people throw, like a used car salesman. The impression is that a salesperson's only job is to screw you.
Yeah.
And
there was a study done recently that said what are the most trusted or mistrusted professions. What do you think number one was?
Probably salesperson.
Lawyers.
Oh, well, there's
Number
that.
2, politicians. Number 3, salespeople.
Okay.
I mean, we up there with politicians and lawyers. Come on. I mean, that's the problem, is that the perception.
And if you would ask your best customers, do they trust you? The answer is absolutely yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So why do you think how did that stereotype start? Where did it all come from?
Well, I think if you go back to the traditional transactional type selling, I mean, it was get out there and sell as much as you can, no matter what it takes, and there were some ethical issues. But in today's environment, the customer's not stupid. The customer's much more educated than they were a generation ago because of access to information with the internet. In fact, they may be overeducated. The problem with the internet is that people have access to all kinds of stuff that may not be the right stuff. So that's another task that we have as a salesperson, is to get rid of some of those preconceived ideas that have been brought on by their access to information, the customer's access.
What do you think the biggest change is in the last, 30 years since you've been doing this?
Technology. I was talking about this yesterday. In my day, we didn't have cell phones. So if you went to a conference, this is a good example. Went to a conference, at the break, there were a bank of 25 or 30 phones, cell phone, wall phones, that were all filled with salespeople trying to call the office. Today, you can't find a payphone. There's no payphone anywhere, and that's one of the biggest challenges, is that you're accessible 24/7, anywhere in the world. It's changed. You used to be able to say, "I couldn't get to you because I couldn't find a phone. I couldn't get the phone."
Yeah.
That's not there anymore. The technology's made us accessible 24/7 all the time, and that's a sales challenge.
I kind of look at that like I feel like maybe that's pulling back a little bit. When the cell phones and all that came on, we were striving to be available all the time.
Yep.
But now I think it's gone too far, and I kind of see myself striving to be more attentive, and I'll get to that later. Not everybody does that, but like that's one of my goals, to be present, aware of what's going on, and then you get a text. Okay, great, that can wait.
And I think that's the point. I do a fair amount of time management in the workshops, and there was a time we said to your customers, "Call me anytime," and the bastards do.
Yeah,
they call you anytime, but we need to educate our customers.
Yeah,
we just say, "I'm available anytime, but I probably won't get back to you till the next business day."
Yeah.
And that's an education thing. We need to educate our customers that although we're available all the time, it's I've got a life too. You've got a life too. So
I have a friend of mine that's a contractor, does wonderful work, but he's very clear about that, and even his voicemail message. You can call me, leave a message. I'll get back to you. You can text me, you can send me an email. But I don't need all three. I respond to all of them. I could almost repeat his voicemail verbatim. But but that's true. It's managing those expectations and training the customer, if you will.
Well, I'm going to go off on a bit of a tangent here, and that's I also say that the person that's most in touch with your customer on a day-to-day basis is your inside sales team. they talk to customers all the time.
Yeah.
Yet they're the least trained people, sales trained people in organizations. We need to train them better, and we need to get them working with the outside team more efficiently, so that the outside person says, I'll tell you what, if you can't reach me, call Mary, Bob, Harry, whatever, inside rep, because they have more access to the information than I do.
Yeah.
Let's speed up the process by going to them. So don't call me, call them.
Yeah.
And that's an education thing, educating the
What would you say what's the difference between customer service and inside sales?
The one word is sales. Customer service is just that, an administrative position which services invoices and POs and administrivia stuff, versus inside sales, which has to be more sales oriented. They have to be thinking, how do I help this outside team? How do I help my company sell more? How do I bridge the gap between I'm at a desk inside a business to being a resource for either the outside sales team or the customer themselves?
We talked a little bit at dinner last night. I've got a great example. A friend of mine sells dental equipment, and it's high-end, expensive stuff. But his inside salesperson literally drives his schedule, and to the point where every day he's somewhere closing a deal.
It's all he's doing.
It's all he's doing, and it's so amazing how effective their system is. What does it take to get to that point with, I think you got to have the right two individuals working together and understanding that. But I just admire that relationship and how efficient that works and how profitable it is, frankly.
You also have to have that, make sure that inside salesperson is trained, that they know their stuff, both from an administration, where to get information side, but also how to get the information from the customers by asking the right questions. So that's a inside sales skill, and then the outside person has to have faith in that inside salesperson to trust them. We tend to become quite territorial as salespeople. This is mine. It's my customer. It's mine. I don't want you touching it. It's mine, right?
I know all about that.
Yeah, but it isn't yours.
Yeah,
it's the company's. Yeah. Right? It's the company's customer. And so we need to get the outside people and the inside people talking and trusting each other more. Yeah.
And lately I've seen too, I think it's an individual basis, from outside person to inside person, but people just have different expectations of what they want the inside sales to do. Mm-hmm. What their expectations are. And it's become very clear to me that we just got to have that conversation. I may need this, but maybe that doesn't work for you and how you want to operate. So they may have a different set of rules. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing we've been kind of working on internally too. Let's just have the conversation. Is this expectation, maybe it's out of line. Maybe that's not the way we're going to do it, right? Or maybe it is. So I think having those conversations with the team is pretty important too. Keeping the inside folks, in the loop. Frankly, they should be more in the loop than we are because they're the heart of
the customers all the time.
Yeah. So awesome. Anything else you want to get off your chest before we let you go? I know we got to get you up to the airport.
No, I'm going to try and head home. I think KC I'm out of Kansas City. I don't think they have TSA, so they're privately run there rather than TSA. So I don't have TSA issues.
No, it's pretty. They've got the new terminal there. It's pretty easy to get in and out of, so we should be in good shape. But we want to thank you again. Appreciate you coming in and trying out the new inside sales training. On our folks.
Well, I think we learned a lot. I learned a lot, and we learned a lot, and from your folks and the folks that were there yesterday. And we're going to do some tweaking, and it should be ready to go pretty soon.
Awesome. Thanks again. It's been great catching up with you. And I was going to maybe have you sell me this pen, but I think I don't want to be shamed. But no, it's been great catching up, and I appreciate you joining us.
Well, thank you. Talk to you soon.
Thanks again, Frank, for joining us. It was great to have you in our office and launch the new sales training for our inside folks. It was great to reminisce and catch up on some of your sales tactics and expertise. So it was great to have you in. We really appreciate your time with us. Remember, if you need help with a project or looking for representation here in the Midwest, you can find us right here at cbmrep.com. Give us a like, share, comment. Let us know what you'd like to see on the next episode. Thanks for joining us on Power the Network. Until next time, we'll see you next time.